Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Our Life. So last we left off, we were in the middle of doing the charity event. So we just finished getting ready and we're about to head to the actual event. So without further ado, let's hop into this. Stepping out into the night, you closed the door behind you gently and looked across the street. Oh, look at that. Cove was standing there as expected next to the garage of his house and tapping away on his phone. He looked up at the sound of the door closing. Hey, Uri. Hey, stranger. I barely recognize you. You took the chance to check out his outfit as you walked across the way to meet you. It was formal for sure, though didn't feel over posh. It made sense for him. He smiled at you, but there was definitely an awkwardness hanging in the air as there tended to be when the two of you hung out. Since you were going to the same place, it made sense to carpool, so officially you were going to the event together.
Thanks.
Thanks for dressing up for the thing. Your outfit looks good. Thank you. Fetch over. Your looks very nice too. You glanced over him from head to toe, nothing that his shirt, pants, and shoes were all very shiny new and very nice indeed. Thanks. Then he shook his head, glancing back towards the garage and throwing a thumb over his shoulder and
Come
spoke.
on.
We should probably get going. Wouldn't want to be late to such a grown-up event, right? Yeah, let's go. You headed over to Cove's car, together hopping in and strapping on your seatbelts. You were on your way. The event was being held at a place you had never been before. You brought up the location on your phone to help Cove navigate there. It took some time to find the right address, and once there, you were met with the task of finding a parking spot. You thought you were on time. It seemed like everyone else had already shown up and claimed the spaces. Eventually, you found a suitable place before realizing it required payment. Cove covered the amount, taking a ticket from the machine and leaving it on the dashboard of the car. Despite the small holdup, you managed to ultimately make it to the event and confirm you were on the guest list before being shown into the dining area. Cove whistled low as he looked around, taking the extravagance of the room. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the entire place was decked out with beautiful oceanic display. You were stunned. You were stunned yourself. It was extremely high class, even more so than you already expected. It's so nice. This is the best looking event I've ever been to. It's way too frilly for me. It's so overdone. Could be worse. Didn't comment. Best looking event we've been to. Your lips parted in a wondrous smile as you took in the decorations and the guests all dressed to the nines. Cove met your eyes with a similar look on his face. You got the impression that he'd felt the same way about it all. The sound of your names being called out echoed over the din in the room. When you looked around, you recognized a couple of the organization's leaders looking your way. They approached you both in greeting, giving you a welcoming smile and a hello. Cove, Ari, we're glad to see you could make it, especially after all the hard work you've done to help make this night happen.
Of course.
Definitely, I wasn't going to miss it. Hi. You say that as if we had a choice, you joked. I wouldn't miss it either. Hello, I'm thrilled to have made it. You gave a soft nod. I wouldn't have missed it either. This is our big night. Of course we had to see what we were working towards. Well, thank you for being part of the team. You're always welcome to help us out with activities wherever they come up. Thank you. Ko shrugged, then eyes darting around the place with an awkward look.
So.
I guess we should talk to more people. There isn't much else to do in an event like this. You found your way into groups of people who were standing around chatting while some light music played in the background. Servers with large silver trays were gliding between the guests, offering drinks in canopies. Cove approached various people as you wound your way through the guests. He managed broaching new conversations as well. You were enjoying talking to so many different people, both guests and members of the organization alike. You found yourself enjoying the company. The sound of a microphone cackling came from the podium at the other end of the room. Someone who you assumed to be the host for the evening was asking everybody to sit down in preparation for the meal and speeches. You and Cove looked for your table, finding it easily enough by the little name cards that were placed delicately beside the napkins. A few others joined you at the table, though they weren't anyone that you recognized. The host was still speaking as people were settling, starting off the speeches by giving a welcoming to everyone attending. She went on to provide some more information about Orca, which you suppose was for the guests who weren't a part of the organization and the purpose of the fundraiser tonight. Orca's goals, as she explained it, were to aid in the conservation and restoration of oceans and beaches. There were many people who had helped to make the group as successful as it was. When she read off a list of several volunteers who worked on making the event happen, Cove's name was one of the first to come up. His chest puffed out in pride with that. Her name then came up a little further down the list. You were smiling from ear to ear at the mention. As she continued to thank the large donors for the event, you checked over at Cove. He was still grinning happily to himself and tapping his fingers over the tops of his knees, pretty pleased to have been mentioned by name. You laughed quietly at his reaction. You rolled your eyes. You were excited for him. You could relate to the feeling. You tried to keep focused on speech. Could relate. It felt good to be acknowledged for all the work you had done leading up to the event. You likely had kept smiling without even realizing it. While the host continued speaking, multiple servers dressed in black were setting the first course of the menu in front of the guests. One of the servers set down a plate in front of you, and you thanked them quietly before looking over the dish with interest. You recognized the dish as a simple Caesar salad. The host quickly wrapped up and ended her speech, thanking everyone for once more before inviting you all to begin your meal. Anyone who had included a special dietary note when signing up for the event received a vegan or vegetarian version, and there were also small baskets of bread set around the table. You ate both the salad and the bread. You just ate the salad. You ate some of the bread. You didn't eat any of it. I can't eat bread. Cove wolfed down his salad before munching into breadstick, quickly devouring that as well. I hope the next part comes out soon and is bigger. You could hear him mumbling to himself as he reached over for another piece of bread. He glanced around the table as he followed his line of sight with curiosity, noting that everyone else was still eating the salad. Stopping his hand midair, he quickly pulled back and rested it on his lap without taking another breadstick after all. It was clear that he was starting to feel unsure of himself and looked like a little out of place here. You watched as he closed his eyes and let out a small breath. Then he reached over again and took another piece of bread, purposely turning away from the table as he ate. Hey, did you like the salad? It was really good. It was too small. It was alright. It was pretty bad. Simply too small. I'm still pretty hungry. Yeah, me too. It wasn't much longer until the main course was arriving and the various chicken, steak, and veggie dishes were being served throughout the room. An array of scents wafted through the room, making your mouth water. You chose the chicken steak, vegan. Excuse me. You went with the vegetarian meal. I like chicken. A plate of perfectly roasted chicken and vegetables was set in front of you with a delectably pale gravy. Cove had gone for the steak, and once he started to dig in, he was completely absorbed by his meal. You're gonna choke if you keep inhaling food like that. You flicked something at him while he was off guard. You focused on your own food. You're gonna choke. You retorted without even looking at from the dish. Most of the people here can do CPR, so I'll be fine. You shook your head in amusement as he continued fervently eating at the same pace. Dinner eventually ended, and at last was dessert, a lemon sorbet that had been partially dyed blue. The mix of white with a bold streak of blue made the little scoop look like a ball of rolling ocean waves. The effect was pretty, but the serving size was small. Perhaps it was a price to pay for artistry. You turned to Cove to find him pouting a little at the size of it all. Digging into dessert, it took him only a few bites to polish it off again. The other people around the table had barely even begun eating. An unimpressed air settled over him as he sat back in his chair, sipping his water unhappily. You should appreciate what you got. You laughed at his moping. You're being such a baby. We can get more dessert later. You cleared your throat. Get more later. You gave him an encouraging smile. He looked at you sheepishly, embarrassed to have been caught sulking over such a thing. He fumbled for a defense. It was just really good, that's all. And now it's gone, but I'm okay. With a light grin, he shrugged to show that he was really fine. All right, Cove. You spooned a mouthful of the sorbet into your mouth, enjoying the bright, citrusy taste on your tongue. It was really delicious. Another person from Orca got up on stage to make a speech as everyone was nearing the end of their meal. They spoke mostly about the individual projects the organization was working on and the plans for the near future, as well as encouraging anyone who was interested in considering volunteering. Cove bent forward over the table with his chin balanced on his hand, listening attentively to the words as they came and the conclusion, and everyone gave them a round of applause. Cove caught your eye and smiled. You wondered what would happen now. And then the light dimmed. A couple of spotlights came on, projecting a water light effect on the room floor. The guests gushed over the ambiance, and you looked around, wide-eyed at the ripples on the wall. The DJ that had previously been playing some soft mood music in the background announced that the floor was open for dancing, slowly turning the volume up so it drifted through the space. When he glanced at Cove, his eyebrows had shot up and he mumbled quietly,
Huh.
I didn't know there would be dancing. I guess it makes sense now that I think about it. He gave an awkward laugh as you both watched as people rose from their seats. It was clear now that many of the donors were couples. A small crowd had gathered to form the dance floor, and the DJ played romantic songs to get everyone started off. Clover propped an elbow on the table again, smushing his cheek in his hand. He idly let his gaze float all over the small sea of guests. Do you want to dance? I'm going to try and find someone to dance with. Who stayed seated? Let's ask him. He raised an eyebrow, thinking the proposition over. After a moment, he smiled and his lip tilted quickly to the side. All right, let's dance. You rose from your seat and followed Cove onto the dance floor. When you had found a spot for yourselves, you turned to him with a small smile, holding his hand out at his sides. He shrugged, unsure what to do with them. Deciding that one of you needed to take the lead, you held a palm up for him with a crooked smile, then raised an eyebrow as he slipped a hand into yours. It took some doing, but amidst your nervous laughter, you managed to find a comfortable enough position to set a rhythm to the music. It was so bad after that, in fact, it was kind of fun, and even Cove seemed content to continue dancing. The party eventually started to wind down, and at last it came to an end. When the main lights turned on, you blinked against the brightness of them, making sure you still had Cove in your sights. One final speaker came up to the podium on the stage, thanking all the guests for coming, and wishing everybody a good night. It had been a long night, and you were ready to be on your way. Stifling a yawn with the back of your hand, you walked together with Cove out to the parking lot. The other guests were doing the same as you got stuck in a bit of a crowd, though Cove was so tall you could always see him, and it was easy not enough not to get separated. The parking lot itself was quite big, and even more noticeable now with fewer cars blocking the view. It took a little while to actually locate Cove's car across its expanse. Eventually you found it, and the two of you bundled inside the vehicle and buckled up. The trip home was quiet as you both silently reflected back on the experience. The event had been the biggest night of the year for Orca, and now it was all over just like that. Outside your window, the surroundings soon became familiar, and you found yourself back in your neighborhood. Cove pulled the car into his driveway and put it in park before letting out a relieved breath. Home sweet home. Yeah. After climbing out of the car, you walked slowly down the road, Cove coming over to stand beside you. You stopped in the middle of the street right between your house and his and turned to him, finding him in the process of opening his mouth to speak. Strangely, he clamped his lips together as though he had suddenly thought better of it. You stay silent? That was quite a night. Good night, Cove. Thank you for taking me tonight. This is kind of awkward. That was quite a night. Cove let out a breathy laugh, nodding in agreement. Yeah, it was.
Night.
Night, Airy. With a last wispy smile, he left towards his front door, figuring you shouldn't linger in the street for much longer. You crossed the remainder of the road and did the same. When you reached your house, you pulled out your keys and stuck them in the door, trying your best to be silent about it. It was quite late, so everybody else was already asleep. As quiet as a mouse, you tiptoed up to your bedroom, changing out of your formal clothes into your pajamas. Now that you were finally home, you were exhausted. You brushed your teeth and got ready for bed in darkness before crawling under your covers and letting out a heavy breath. It was still strange to think about how that was it. The build-up to the event had felt like so much. Now it was completely behind you. Your mind was busy with rapid yet muddled thoughts as you faded closer and closer to sleep. As unconsciousness crept up on you, you felt more content. It was a big deal, but there would be more in the future. You could accept what it had been, and you could dream about what you get to experience next. And then you pulled away from dreams right back into reality when your phone went off. It buzzed twice and then fell silent. Who would be texting you right now? You sleepily wondered if it was worth checking. We're gonna check that. You stretched your arm out and fumbled your phone off the charger. Your eyes squinted in the dark to make out a name, and you did. Cove. You unlocked your phone and started his message. It was simple and unexpected. The Fireflys are back. You processed the text and shook your head awake, your brain up a little. You wondered why Cove knew that. You thought it was really weird for Cove to inform you the Fireflys Out of the blue, you were excited to hear it. You felt a wave of annoyance. The fact Cove texted you so late about anything, you just accepted the news blandly. Excited. It was the season for them, so it made sense for the Fireflys to be out and about. But the reminder made you smile. Maybe who would text you a picture of them? You stole a glance out your window, and you thought you might have seen a flash that could have been a firefly, but you couldn't tell for sure. Your window didn't have the best vantage point for that. You went to the hill behind your house. You wanted to sleep now. We're gonna go. After a quick stretch, you shoved off your blanket and climbed out of bed. The floor was cool on your feet as you stood, using the light of your phone to navigate and grab some shoes. For an impromptu midnight excursion, you were as ready as you were going to be. You went downstairs and quietly slipped into the night. No need to worry about your parents. It was a little on the cool side outside, but it was refreshing rather than the uncomfortable. You sped briskly behind your house. It didn't take you long to make into the old white poppy hill cover. Cove was right. The air was aglow with fireflies. And then you caught the sight of the main man himself. Cove was sitting still at the top of the hill, surrounded by the lights. One of his arms was stretched out, a firefly flickering on his hand bizarrely as he was still in his formal clothes, apparently unconcerned about getting them dirty. He nodded slightly to you, not wanting to the creature to fly away, and nodded, unsurprised at your arrival. Hey. Ugh. Look at that. Isn't that so cute? And why is the man still in his stuff from the event? Did the man decide he wasn't going to change when he got home? Because I assume it says we slept, that we were out for at least a decent amount of time. So has he just been chilling like that? That can't be comfortable. Hey. Hi. I was asleep before you texted, you know. Thanks for telling me. You shouldn't text me so late. You started quietly. Thanks for telling me. It's cool. The fireflies just made me think of you. I didn't realize how late it was. Cove shrugged and turned away. He focused back on the fireflies on his hand. Now that you were closer, you could see it was crawling up his finger to the highest point. When it reached his fingertip, Cove would tilt his palm down so it would climb back up his hand. I did go home, if you're thinking about that, but I knew it wasn't going to be able to settle down. So I just walked back out. I needed fresh air and time away from everything. The beach was nice, then I came here and you know what happened. You understood a little better at this point. There wasn't much more to say. Instead, you quietly observed the sparkling fireflies for a time. He did the same. Then, without warning, Cove plopped his back onto his back and paid no mind to smacking his formal attire against the grass. He put an arm under his head and stretched the rest of his limbs out. He was clearly getting quite comfortable in the dirt there. You kept standing. You sat down. We're gonna lay down too. You sat down first, then fell back. You could see the stars when you looked up at the night sky. I wonder if Dad will be mad about the grass stains. He tugged at the collar of his shirt. He didn't sound concerned, just idly curious. At least they're dark. If you're lucky, he won't be able to tell. His smile bent a little and went silent between you two. The only sounds were the rustling of bugs and breeze and faraway crashes of waves on the sea. You continued watching the fireflies. You want to catch some fireflies? You asked Cove if he wanted to catch fireflies. You challenged him to rolling down the hill. I want to race you down the hill. Whoever can roll the fastest wins. Cove chuckles as he crossed his knees casually. How will we even tell who won? We'd both be rolling. We could shout it, or maybe we just do a quick check for the other as soon as we reach the bottom. He tilted his head towards you and uncrossed his legs. Well, I'm already in position. Let's do it. With a smile, you wondered if he had a disadvantage in his formal wear. Then again, wasn't like pajamas were made for rolling either. And even though you were already on the ground, you twisted the way you were settled to be a bit more prepared. Then you stared each other down. It was almost time. Then this was serious business. Right. You know the rules. On the count of 3. You nodded, tucking your limbs in tight, and prepared yourself. 1, 2, 3. Go! You hurled your body sideways. You could only imagine Cove was doing the same. You were rolling, and the hill was suddenly over. It felt like a much shorter trip than it used to. You stuck your dizzy head in the air, locked eyes with Cove as he was down there already as well. Both of you were breathing heavily a satisfied expression creeping up onto your faces. I made it down first. You won. Looks like we tied. Did you see who won? I didn't. You stayed silent. Looks like we tied. Cove looked mute. Unsuccessfully hid a laugh behind his hand. Yeah, that was a tie. Cove dropped back onto his side and rolled the rest of the way over to you. You couldn't stop yourself from laughing and laid down next to him when he arrived. The hour grew late and the fireflies mostly disappeared until only a few stragglers remained. Then even they blinked out of sight, leaving you alone with Cove and your thoughts. It felt as though it was a night that would never end, but you knew it would have to all soon. You were only grateful to have been a part of it. These were the moments to treasure, and you already knew you'd be remembering them for a very long time. So sweet. So nice. So hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to hit like and subscribe and come back so we can finish this, because I just checked the store page and we get more Derek DLC in step 4, which we didn't really have DLC in step 4. When I played through it originally, it was just an epilogue, so that'll be interesting to see. And if you look in the thing, it says there is DLC images for Baxter, but Baxter doesn't show up a lot of the DLC. So I'm assuming they have something in the works for him. I'm kind of excited. So make sure you subscribe so you can come back to see if anything turns out on that, because I guarantee you want to see it. I want to see it. Baxter's hot. Anyway, without further ado, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way.